Welcome back everyone. As far as the last session was concerned, I really hope that you were stimulated to think about the various facets of the selling process, whether it was various strategies that could be adopted in various stages, and also I hope you must have also thought how all these has transformed or maybe evolved as a part of the selling process, because this is what we'll be talking today. But before that, I think I'll make you understand what this module is going to be all about. Firstly, there is some extra fodder for thought elements in which I'll be providing you some links of the articles where you'll be able to read more about how we can respond to objections and also about selling etiquette. Apart from that, we'll get to the core of discussing about the transformative factors affecting the selling process and evolution of the selling process from a strategic perspective. And afterwards, we'll move to understanding various theories of selling, discussion over their implications as far as today's scenario is concerned, and then we'll get to the Miller-Heman approach to selling. But before we move further and dig deep into the transformative and evolution factors, this is what I have extra for you. Objection handling 44 common sales objections and how to respond. This is one of the articles which I have actually taken from HubSpot. I would request you to go and read about it. You will find a lot of intriguing information from this article. Apart from that, I have one more article for you which is about do's and don'ts of selling etiquette, and this has been derived from the official website of Karus International. I would request you to go and read this as well, because see, the whole objective of the course is not just to transmit or maybe share with you, or maybe I would say have a collaboration about the selling concepts, but also make sure that you learn things which are going to make a lot of practical difference as far as the sales job is concerned. That's why both these articles, I hope you will definitely enjoy reading these. Now let's get to the important part or an important aspect of how all these facets, whether you talk about prospecting, pre-approach, approach, presentation, overcoming objections, close and follow up, how these have entirely changed as the time passed. Now let's talk first about prospecting. See, if you talk about completely traditional approach, right, it was all about salesman doing everything. He was doing prospecting, he was kind of checking out directories and calling people, he was trying to kind of visit various, maybe let's say was in the out in the market to find out from the distributors who could be his prospects. But if you talk about the present days, this has entirely changed, because see, it would be completely nonsensical if you have a very smart salesman who can definitely bring in a lot of business. And when we are talking about smart, we are definitely talking about those two important elements, apart from the other factors, that he has a very good ego drive, high ego drive, as well as he has that element of empathy, because this works best in conjunction with other sales qualities, or maybe you can say the skill set that might be required to be successful in a selling profession. Now just imagine if such kind of people are wasting majority of their time in prospecting. So what has happened as a transformative step is, now this is being done by the telemarketing team, or maybe you can say internet selling, which means you might have a team in the organization which sits on the back end, or maybe telemarketing team who will try to do prospecting for the sales people, and once they find out a qualified lead, they'll forward it to the sales people or will share it with them. Then they'll be investing their quality time in converting those leads to actual consumers, then kind of spending majority of their time in just figuring out who their prospect could be. See, when we talk about organizational prospecting, what we are trying to say is that the organization has kind of developed a team, has provided support staff to the people who will be doing all these services, and this also indicates that they might be using a very high advanced customer relationship management software for that, right? If it has enriched data about various kinds of customers, then you go ahead and use that, and then you figure out who fits best in your buyer persona. I think maybe we can put it like this. But if you look at it from a very evolved perspective, it has now become a game of customer retention and deletion. It's not just about finding out, or figuring out the people who fit your buyer persona. It is also important to decide whether they are going to be profitable for you or not. It is more about asking, shall we retain them or shall we delete them? So this in a way also indicates that you might also shuffle or keep monitoring your existing accounts to find out whether they are profitable for you or not, right? If you are dealing with someone who has not been profitable for you, or maybe even somehow closing one deal with someone who is not going to be profitable for you, this in a very simplistic way or logically can be called as bad business. So the whole idea of evolved selling process and prospecting is go for the process of figuring out customer retention and deletion, which means you should definitely try to see your existing you know customers or even the prospects that you are trying to target from 80-20 rule, which means just focus on those people who bring in 80% of your revenues, keep them satisfied. But you can definitely focus on a lower chunk provided they bring in break even, or at least they bring in that quantity to decrease the cost. Now if you have someone who is taking majority of your resources and is not even contributing to profitability, it will definitely is going to be a bad deal. Now the other part is when you talk about pre-approach, in earlier days they used to use index cards which used to have 3 by 5 size or something like that, in which the salespeople would manually record the name of the prospect or the customer or some important information about them, what business they are in, or the people who have been dealing with them earlier, or some key important points that they passed on to regarding this particular prospect. But all these things have changed now. So the transformative factor was now they can use, as in salespeople can use laptops in which they have all the data. They also get the support of staff, which can kind of analyze that data and bring or kind of churn out or maybe say draw insights or important information from them which can be used with them. As far as the evolved selling process is concerned, we have got to the stage of database and knowledge management, where you have huge databases of customers with respect to their past buying history, their even preferences could be recorded on the basis of predictive analytics, or you go for predictive segmentation where you try to segment consumers on the basis of their past behavior or how their purchase baskets look like, or also with respect to how much turnover they have, because this might in a way indicate their financial credibility or things like that. So database and knowledge management is all about maintaining and using a high database of customers to draw the best of insights for them, and then make sure that this customer is going to work for you or is going to be an asset with respect to the long term orientation that you might have. Now when you get to the third stage, which is about approach, or the stage where you are meeting the prospect, earlier the focus was always about somehow make sure that you talk to them or get the required information or get what is important to close the deal. But it's not the case today. As far as transformative factors are concerned, the whole approach is all about building a foundation, which means you try to kind of develop maybe a bond with them, right? You'll ask them questions, because the key lies in asking questions. It will help you understand their needs better, and then you can pinpoint, okay, this is the product which I can offer it to them. As I was telling you earlier also, this is how your presentation can be designed. So this stage as a transformative factor was all about building a foundation, just kind of trying to build that bond, and maybe you can say getting friendly with them, showing care, things like that. But now it is all about nurturing those relationships. See, whenever you talk about nurturing those relationships, you start treating the other party as your own, which means you'll try to act as their consultant. The motive is not just going to be about the profits or closing that deal. You will actually might even go ahead and invest your resources and see what is it that is going to be more beneficial or fruitful for them in long term. That's why we call this as relationship selling, where you actually get into that consultative or maybe a consultant mood. You invest in understanding their functions, processes and other facets which are important for them, and then you see where the problem lies, or maybe if there is no problem, how you can improve their production efficiency, their overall performance as an organization and things like that. Now when you get to presentation, earlier in traditional approach it was just given to one person. Now as a transformative factors, one thing is it is given to buying centers, which we all know is a kind of a team who actually takes the buying decision, and you might have different people, whether it is an initiator or maybe gatekeeper or the influencer or the buyer or other players which we discussed in the last module. One way is this. Now it's not the case that you are only presenting it to one person. Now in this case it gets more complicated, right? Because what you are doing is you need to satisfy all these people than just focusing on one person. Other thing is, as far as the presentation is phase is concerned, now technology gives you a larger edge with respect to using PowerPoint media, using audio visual mediums, right? Doing some calls virtually in which you first develop a better understanding and then going ahead with the physical meetings and all that. But now again, as a part of evolved selling process, it is all about marketing the product, which means you are not just focused on selling, you do everything to make them realize how you are focused on creating, communicating and delivering value to them. It's all about making sure that whatever you are providing it to them is well aligned with their needs and their requirement as far as this particular organization is concerned. In a way, I think if it might look repetitive, but it is all about squashing that you are not bothered about one day deal, rather you are focused about the long term relationship and the benefits that it might bring in. Now if you get to the next stage and you talk about overcoming objections, in the traditional approach it was all about, as I told you, as an hurdle, just cross it and close the deal. But now objections are a means to understand. In the transformative setup, it is a means to understand, the needs of the prospect or the customer, right? And again, the key lies in asking more questions, and once you are thorough with what they are looking for, you can definitely provide them that product. But in evolved selling process, it is all about solving their problems, partnering with them, creating long term value for them, right? In a way, it's more like you collaborate with them to figure out what their problems are and how the products or solutions that you're offering are going to solve it for them. Now when you get to the next stage, which is again closing, earlier it used to be how somehow get that deal and close it, right? Because the ideology was, I don't think I'll be seeing you again, in a way, though it is on a funny note. Whereas in transformative, it is all about identifying mutual goals, how you can kind of be beneficial to each other, or maybe how you can create a win-win situation. Whereas in evolved selling process, it is all about adding value and satisfying needs. See, why we are talking about the concept of adding value is because this will definitely require an investment from your side also. You might be required to change some part of your product or modify them. You might be required to change the raw materials or ingredients which you were using. You might even be required to invest in R&D or research and development more to understand the markets or needs of the customers and how you can add value for them. It might even require you to come up with new technology or buy new technology so that you can manufacture better quality products for your customers or clients, or maybe if you want to pitch new products in which the cost is keeps on going less, or maybe cost is decreased to a little but the quality is not compromised at all. Now when you get to the last part, follow up was all about sales is done, my job is over. You might even make one call, that too very on a very superficial level, just for the namesake. Whereas in transformative selling, it's all about using the technology. You can send them emails, use audio visual, those creative messages and things like that to make it more appealing and more enriching for your customer or someone who has already bought the products from you. Whereas involved selling process, it is all going to be about customer relationship maintenance, which means you keep in regular touch with them and you try to figure out if they are happy with the product, if any kinds of repairs are required, or if there's any problems which they are facing, because this information can also be utilized for other customers. And when maybe the existing customer has raised some concerns which are very crucial with respect to the future business, the CRM will keep reminding you to check for that, or maybe will set up a follow-up call or follow-up reminders to check if you have called them again or not. See, the power of customer relationship maintenance cannot be undermined at all, because as far as today's scenario is concerned, the key insights that you derive from predictive analytics or on the basis of actual behavior of the customers is of very high value as far as the sales processes or selling in future is concerned. So the whole idea of talking about the transformative factors and evolved selling process was to give you a perspective how things have changed all these years and how technology is making very important with respect to what sales people are doing. I think if you remember, at one stage we also talked about sales automation, where we discussed in very brief, how various jobs which were earlier done manually by sales people are now being done electronically or through computer systems or softwares, or maybe you can say through ERP systems. Because see, the whole idea is to make sure that such menial tasks which are not very important could be done in other ways, and the salespeople can be allowed to actually invest more of their resources in nurturing the relationship or closing deals, which again becomes very important for an organization to survive, to grow, and to be profitable. And definitely we can't miss the element of sustainable, because you are not just focusing on that day deal, you are focusing on the overall future relationship. So now, as you have understood the various transformative and evolved facets of selling process, we'll discuss in brief about various theories of selling. So we'll be precisely talking about 4 key theories. First one is AIDAS, which is attention, interest, desire, action and satisfaction model. We'll be talking about the right set of circumstances theory, spin selling, and finally we'll be moving to the behavioral equations theory. Now first let's start with AIDAS. I think I already spoke about AIDA in brief, but what we have is an added element which comes as S, which means satisfaction, and which again talks about the fact once the action is done or the sale has been made, you should always focus on satisfaction or the follow-up process. Now let's first talk about the one who contributed to this. William James, for sure. Support of this theory is found in his writings. Now as per this theory, maybe you can say a prospect's mind will pass through all these stages. Like the first way would be you need to get his attention, then kind of generate an interest, foster it to desire, leading to an action, and finally fostering or stimulating a satisfaction with the product or service that you have given, right? So in a way this model, let's say if you are giving a training to a new salesman, or if there is a new salesman, this can actually works as a skeletal system for them to kind of devise how they would be going ahead with the discussion, or how would they pitch, or maybe in the sense like working towards deciding your own blueprint, how would you take this presentation forward, or how would you like to interact with the prospect. Because see, whenever a salesman is new, they don't have that much experience to understand how things will work. So these models usually provide them some support system to keep things going. Now first is securing attention. Now as far as the stage of securing attention is concerned, the key objective is to bring the prospect or the customer to receptive state. It is more about that they become open to hearing you out. See, until unless the other person doesn't seems open or is not very receptive to what you are saying, things might not work. Like I'll give you one example. See, many times when you receive this telemarketing calls and the other person simply says, I'm calling from this and this insurance agency, I'm calling from this and this bank to offer you a credit card. Many times you don't even say anything and you cut the call, or many times you might say, I don't want this, and you will simply cut the call because you might not be interested in hearing more. So that's why securing attention becomes important. So even today, even in telemarketing, it becomes important what they say, how they say should be something which holds on the other person to the call. And in this case, the key point is opening remarks or conversation starters, or maybe you can say openers. See, why this becomes important is, now if you look at the entire sales process, the goal is to kind of take the prospect from the stage of hello, how you doing, or hello, I am so and so, this to let's sign the buying agreement today, or maybe them responding to it, please hand over the buying agreement to us, or let's close this deal. So it might seem 2 sentences, but definitely the journey is very hard. It can be easy if you follow or adapt to the right principles in the best possible ways. Now I thought, why don't we talk about some of the starters, right? So first could be discuss over something interesting and worth appreciating that you find out while you were doing the research on the prospect or the customer. Let's say you found out this particular owner or organization has been winning awards from maybe let's say any sales agency or any reputed organization who is giving awards, and they have been winning it over a few years. Now that can be a good conversation starter. It will not only make them comfortable, it will also make them bring in that feel good factor. Other thing is, you can start the conversation with any relevant but non-controversial recent happenings. In this case, what becomes important is that you somehow should gauge their interest. Now this is only going to work if you have done some bit of research earlier, maybe got some idea through great gatekeepers or any of the important partners to the buying center, but make sure that it is non-controversial. Let's understand it through one example. Let's say India recently won one of the important cricket matches against any other team, right? So the important would be, if the other person is very much interested in cricket, he'll definitely enjoy that conversation, and it might bring that comfort level between two people. Other way would be, if you kind of adjust he's not that interested, then there will be no point in talking about it, or you figure out that this is not something, an area of interest and things like that. And see, sometimes you also might get cues from the place you are sitting. Let's say if you see a lot of paintings which are some kind of modern art or some wall hangings, then that could also be a conversation starters. Now it all becomes on the smartness or sensitivity of the salesman, what he observes and how he takes things forward. Other thing could be hobbies and activities, which I just explained. Other way could be you talk about their life or professional and growth and achievement stories or journey, because that can also be one of the connecting points. Let's say you figured that out through your research, that earlier this person was not in a very good financial state, and with all his hard work he took that organization to a very high level, which is now known as one of the best organizations. So definitely talking about that is not only going to make him feel you know a little empowered, or maybe you can say feel good about them, or will light up the environment or bring in those positive energies. It might work in that way. So this is another thing which you can use. Other thing is, once you are done with initial conversation starters and you hit the tone right, you can now get further about how they would like to take their business to the next level, or how then you can also plug in how your organization can add value for that, or maybe other things could be what is their favorite part of business and things like that. See, these indeed are very, very important, because which this in a way lay down the foundation of how the conversations are going to be. Now when you get to the next stage, after you have secured their attention, it is all about gaining their interest, right? This stage is more about intensely fueling the attention into interest. Now interest means they are more fuel to know more about your product, or maybe say your organization or whatever you have come to offer them. Now in a way this also works on account of the enthusiasm of the salesman, or this can also work if you share some thought provoking or maybe say fascinating findings about the product or service. Let's say if the product has been regarded as the best product for the last 5 years, or from the last 2 years, or even for 1 year, or if the organization has been regarded as the best organization for making some contributions to the society. Now these things might stimulate more of interest, but you should also see how much that aligns with the business or needs of the prospect. Because if what the fascinating part about the product you are sharing is very much aligned with the needs of the prospect, it is definitely going to bring in a lot of synergies, or will, maybe you can say, escalate their interest a lot more, right? So this is one thing which you can do. Otherwise, for gaining interest, you might even show them a small video which could be very, very stimulating with respect to emotional aspects, cognitive aspects, and eventually kind of bringing their behavior in line with what you are looking for, at least on the initial level. So sometimes what happens is, even the prospects might drop some hints about their pain points. Like he might start talking about he's not happy with the competitor's product because of the quality or cost and things like that. Then you can thrive on these things to gain their interest and take things forward. Now once you have kind of garnered their interest, it's all about kindling their desire. Now desire, in a research dynamics, it means the state of mind where an individual or the prospect has the motivation to perform an action or achieve a goal, which means you bring them closer to finally placing an order. You can say when they are mentally prepared, or they are moving in that direction where they have made calculations about the pros and cons of the product, and then you take them forward. Now when we talk about the pros and cons, it is also very much aligned with making sure that all the objections, whether they are hidden or expressed, have been handled very well. Because see, these are the apprehensions in a way, or Objections can be synonymous to apprehensions which the prospect or customer might have with respect to finally placing an order. So it becomes important at this stage that you make sure you ask right questions, probe gently, and find out the hidden and expressed objections, and then you take them forward by keeping the value driven approach in mind. Now once you have rekindled the desire in the prospect or the customer, now you should induce the action, because eventually your object is to take that order, right? But again, keep in mind that you should not focus on closing this first deal, have a relationship orientation, right? So first attempt trial close, and you should try to gauge out how much prepared they are for the sale, because I told you, I think in the last session only, that if they say direct no, it might bring in some kind of awkwardness, right? So a trial close solves that purpose. Once the action has been induced and they have, let's say, they bought the product or maybe they placed the order, then also keep in touch with them and make sure everything happens on time, which again becomes a part of building satisfaction. You assure them that they made the right choice, delivery is done on time, training is done on time, you go for health check calls. But if he says no, or the action, required action is not induced, then what? Then also you should keep in touch, work on that relationship, and try your best to make the prospect or customer realize how your product will work best for them. Just work on nurturing that relationship. Even you have to visit them without any purpose, and many times every meeting should not be about sales or closing that deal. If it becomes more about how they are doing or other things, or indicating that care, it can definitely bring in more positive results in future. Now as a part of this, I have come up with some extra fodder for thought for you, which is all about sales openers. So I have kind of provided, or maybe you can say assembled, links of two fantastic articles which talks about 21 sales openers to improve your pitches and boost sales, and the other one is 15 perfect sales conversation starters. While one of them has been derived from indeed.com, which is one of very popular you know online recruitment platforms, and the other one is from inc.com. So I would definitely request and urge you to go through these and then definitely share what you think about this. Or the best way would be, why don't you come up with your own sales openers, imagining yourself to be in one of these positions of meeting the prospect or customer for the first time, and then we'll see who comes up with the best sales opening line, or maybe the sales opening pickup line. We'll be happy to read about these in the forum. Once you are done with this session, you can definitely go and share your opinion. Now the second theory which we are going to discuss today is right set of circumstances theory, which means everything was right for the sale. I think one way of maybe analyzing right set of circumstances theory would be, just imagine if someone wants to propose someone, they'll do everything right, get the flowers, book a table or do some special things to make sure that it works out well. So this is what right set of circumstances theory is all about. You do everything, or you try to create an environment or an ambience so that the other person says yes. This is more like situation response analogy, which means that you create those circumstances in which the prospect will respond in a predictable or a particular way, right? And this particular theory can also be combined with you do things to secure their attention, gain interest, present right stimuli in the hope of getting the desired response, right, from the prospect or the customer. But one thing which is prominent about this theory is that it has two factors. One is internal, the other one is external. Now the salesperson has complete control over external factors, in the sense like you might give a gift to the prospect, you might take them out for a lunch or a dinner or something, or you try to create that environment where you can make them a little more receptive, or you do extra things for them to kind of get that response from them, which is obviously you want them to say yes with respect to giving you the opportunity to sell. But it also captures the facets of internal factors which are more in a way aligned to the prospect, in the sense like I might invite the prospect for lunch, but it is his thing whether he wants to come or not, whether he or she is interested or not, whether he or she is interested in going with the salesperson or not, or things like that. And the problem with this theory is this theory only gives more weightage or importance to the factors which are very external, or kinds of gives complete control to the salesperson of commanding the situation and externally controlling it, whereas it undermines the factors which are very internal to the prospect. But in another ways, I would say still doing right things in the right way after making the prospect or customer very comfortable, this can work well. If not the deal, at least you will have the opportunity to present what you want and kind of work on the relationship which you always wanted to establish with the client. But I want you to think, how this can be modified to suit the present sales circumstances. Now we are getting to the another important aspect of, I would say, strategic selling, spin selling, a concept which was proposed by Neil Rackham. Again, one of the stalwarts who contributed a lot to the evolution of sales, I would say, and is also one of the best selling authors with respect to the books that he has written. Now, as far as this particular theory is concerned, this specifies or maybe highlights the importance of asking right kind of questions. I think all this while, maybe if you talk about the second week or the beginning of the third week, we all have been, trying to foster that in sales. It is very important that you ask the right kind of questions, because they not only make you analyze, go for a deeper needs analysis, they also help you in a way to kind of fine tune your presentations with respect to what the prospect or the customer is looking for. Now this has four facets. S stands for situation questions, P for problem questions, I for implication questions, and N for need payoff. Now situation questions are more about you try to analyze or you ask questions that make you understand the buyer's existing situation. Now this could be the starting point of discussion, right? Now once you have analyzed their existing situation, or you ask them a lot of questions, then you get to the problem questions, because from their situation you will be able to figure out the buyer's pain point, and then you make them realize, okay, this is the problem that you could be facing on, and you have a discussion about maybe, let's say, any means of dissatisfaction or any, I would say, hassle that they might be facing. Now once the problems have been highlighted, you get to the implication questions, in which you eventually make them realize, how, if this problem is not solved, how costly this is going to be for you. In the sense, like, you're trying to build a base to tell them, okay, see, you have this problem, I understand, if this is not solved, this is the cost that you will be bearing it, and then you get to need payoff, but I have a solution for you, which eventually is your product. Now if you look at all these facets, which is about understanding their situation, trying to find out problems in that, and showing the implications that these problems can have, and then pitching your product, see, it follows a very logical, I would say, a sequence. So this anyway again can be a very, very good, I would say, a blueprint for a new salesman to kind of pitch, or maybe have a thought process based on spin when they meet the prospect or the clients. And this is definitely going to work when you have done your homework and you are trying to find out that, with respect to, let's say, the efficiency, you got to know through one of the gatekeepers that the product which they are using now, if it is a, let's say, B2B selling or some technical product, that their production efficiency has gone very down and the cost is very, very high. Just imagine how beautifully you can align all this with respect to spin selling, whether it is, situation questions that can be your conversation starters after initial greetings, then getting to the part of problem questions, where you actually get empathetic with them and make them realize, okay, if these are the things that you are facing, and you bring an element of care, and then getting to the implication questions, which again will foster care and your concern for them, and will lay the foundation of relationship building also, and then finally getting to the need payoff. But see, no matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I explain, it can never be best than hearing from the horse's mouth. So we'll do one thing, we'll now hear, or maybe we'll have look at this video by the Neil Rackham itself, where he is talking about the spin selling, or how or maybe I would say the relevance that it holds today itself. So this is the thing we'll be doing now. So please have a look at this video, and when we'll be meeting in the next session, we'll talk about it a little, and then we'll move forward to the last theory part, and we'll talk about their practical implications before finally getting into the Miller-Hemans approach of strategic selling.
The spin model is about understanding. I suppose the breakthrough with spin was it's no longer about persuading customers. People persuade themselves. It's about really understanding them and their needs so that you can do a good job of creating value. That hasn't changed. But some other things have changed, which make the spin model probably more relevant today than it was 30 years ago. One of those things is that the products have become commodities, so that salespeople are the differentiator. If salespeople are the differentiator, then how do they differentiate? They differentiate by really understanding the customer much more deeply than the competition, by being able to create new creative solutions, by being able to bring value. And the spin model is a very helpful way to do that. But we are in the 21st century, and the spin model's got to change. Way back, when we did the original spin research, we found that situation questions, questions about fact, were slightly negatively correlated with success. You could ask too many of them. Today, they're actively, positively, negatively correlated. That is, you ask a lot of situation questions and the customer will become really impatient. They'll say, you should have done your homework. You should have known that. Because a lot of the things that you found out with the spin model 30 years ago, you found out face-to-face with the customer because there was no other way to do it. Today, you can research that. You don't have to ask as many situation questions. So situation questions change. Problem questions change too. One of the things which we found 30 years ago was if you ask customers about problems, you find out their needs, you find out information which helps you sell, which helps them understand their own problems. You get into areas where they have energy and where they have interest. But in those days, it was enough to ask problems about how things are now. You could ask problem questions like, are you happy with your present supplier? Are you getting the right kind of performance out of the equipment you're using? Do you get the right service levels 24/7 from your present way of doing things? You're trying to uncover problems that way. Now, what's happened is this. Those problem questions aren't quite as easy to ask and surefire as they used to be. If you say, do you have problems with your present equipment? No, most people say no, it's working okay. Whereas 30 years ago, when things were much less reliable, you could be pretty sure there'd be an answer there that you could use. So that's one change. But another change is this, and it's a curious one. Research done in the last 3 or 4 years shows that customers rate the added value of salespeople as highest when salespeople ask about future problems, not just about present problems. I remember I interviewed one buyer in this research, and he said to me, you know, if I fall into a pit, there's 50 salespeople who can sell me a ladder to help me climb out. There's only 1 in 50 who can stop me from falling into the pit in the first place. That's a way of saying I'm interested in people who can help me with the problems that have not yet occurred, not just the problems that have occurred. So that's how problem questions change in this new world of selling, spin in the 21st century. Implication questions are even more important now than they were when we first did it. Implication questions proved to be most powerful in the original research when people were selling complex solutions. Well, the solutions today, compared with 30 years ago, are even more complex. It's even more important to ask implication questions. And finally, need payoff questions, questions about value. We live in a world driven by value. Almost the definition of selling today is creating customer value. And how can you create it if you don't ask about it? So need payoff questions are as powerful or more powerful today in the 21st century than they were back in the 20th century when we discovered the spin bottle.
So I thank you for attending this session, and I hope you found it very enriching, and I'm very sure you definitely learnt a new things with respect to talking about the stalwart Mr. Neil Rechem and the scholarly work that he has done as a part of his contribution to the sales world, and definitely this video is going to make it much more thrilling for you. So I thank you for now. We'll be meeting soon in the next session. Have a good day.